everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Ruthless Truth with Ruth. I am here with my girl, Sammy, and I am so glad that you're here. Look at her throwing up the peace sign. Listen, I had to reread your name a couple times to make sure I said it correctly, because I kept on wanting to just say O, and O stands for the original gangster, and throw that out there to the world and see how they absorb that. But
Yeah.
make sure I say it. So, Sammy De La O.
There you go, De La O.
Am I saying it right? Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Look at us.
Add a little
Okay,
sofrito in there, a little spice. Think about it.
okay.
We all use different seasonings. However you say it, you said it exactly.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad you're here and I'm excited to jump into who you are and what your life story is. And I feel like for us to do that, I want to learn about your childhood. I want to learn about how you grew up. I want to know about your parents. I want to know about all of the life that set up this foundation. So go ahead and start there. Let me hear it.
I love the question. It's so timely. So here it is. So I'm Mexican, Italian, Polish.
Okay.
Both of my parents are one of five. My dad's full Mexican. My mom is 50% Mexican, and then the other half is Italian and Polish. And to bring it even another layer is I had one grandfather come to the States in a trunk and another one in a train, right? So there's just like some foundational bones there. Um,
Okay.
and, I grew up, my parents kept, I have an older sister, a younger sister, and I mean, they kept us busy with sports, dance. If I wasn't doing sports or dance, it was someone's, you know, quinceañera, baptism. I mean, when you're Mexican, Italian, Polish, your parents are one of five. And just to bring you where you are today, if I'm like, hey Ruth, imagine like, hey, you're a grandma and you have 17 great grandchildren, like that's my grandfather right now. So it's like both my parents are one of five. Cousin wise, I'm like one of 15, one of 16 on each side. And then now there's 18 great grandchildren.
So you mentioned that you did a lot of activities, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing for a family to have. I would say, what's like the best activity that you did, or the activity that you learned the most about who you are?
Mhm.
That's always an interesting for me. Like, I'll just give you my example. Soccer and dance were the places that I got to be really creative, right? And so
Yeah.
that's a lesson that I got to sort of be wild, creative, and have fun. But I'm
Mhm.
interested to know, like, what was yours?
Mine was dance and basketball. Dance in the sense of like hearing the words, I mean, flexibility, accountability, and
Mm.
and just being on time. Like I was this 5-year-old kid, and if class was at 8 o'clock and I walk in at 8:01, I got locked out. So it was a very strict space. And then with basketball, it was a mixture of my teammates. Like obviously you hear all the time there's no, I in team or whatever the correct analogy is. But I also had a very timely, like it was, I would say my very first mentor. His name is Coach Gage, Johnny Gage, and he was this person where he just drilled into all, he was a basketball coach for all the girls. And he had a daughter that got pregnant at 14 years old. So he was like outside of the, the this amazing guy that taught us the game and working together. He also tapped in on a personal life, like don't go with stupid
Mm.
boys and things like that. So he was like it was very I almost said implementative. That would have been a fake word. But he was just very molding like outside of the court, and I think that was something where I was like, "Oh, okay." So those would be the two.
Hmm. During your like early years, what's like one statement or what's one lesson that you learned from your mom and then one you learned from your dad or like a grandparent figure? For me, I think like I always just think of my mom just being like, give it your all. Like you have to be all in. If you're going to
Yeah.
pursue this, there is no, do I feel like it? Do I care about like it's you're in. So if you're signing up for this sport the entire season and you're giving 100%. So what would one statement be from those individuals during that time?
My grandfather, follow your shot. And in looking at it now, outside of it, hey, follow your shot in basketball. Like, don't be. I was always like following up back with people, right? My father was just show up. Doesn't matter, always show up. Um, and it's kind of like leave your ego at the door. Just always show up, and also have your have your jersey nice and pressed. Like to this day, I always travel with a steamer. My parents put my sisters and I in like private schools. I'll never forget the day like where my older sister had like a wrinkly skirt and a wrinkly shirt, and he was just like, "Listen, I work my butt off to get you guys here." Like he is a very my dad's very keep, press clothes, also clean car. With my mom, I smile because I can't wait for you to meet her one day. But I think my mom is just, it's more like the heart aspect of it. And I think it was just more of be in support of yourself, listen to your body, drink water. And yeah, those were, I would say those are the top three.
So, based upon those phenomenal statements, my next question would be essentially like, how did they form your values from those three individuals? How did they help develop how you walk through life or the structure that you have now that you're utilizing today? Because I think like those are great to like, oh, now you have these skills that have added, but like I think values, the way I'm going to describe it is sort of the underlining statements that we have that guide our interactions or push us in life.
Mm. So it's interesting the word value in general, Ruth, is it's like one of those things. It's like we've all heard it before, right? But honestly, I felt like I didn't really see the word until last year in July. And then I kind of like was like, "Oh, what are my values?" And I did a lot of work. I did a lot of coursework, people work, mentor work. But now hearing what I just said and implementing it within the values, if I just had to say one word, it's a mixture of what am I putting in my body, whether it's words and water and faith, right? Um, so yeah, I would just say more of my values are faith now. The second thing is showing up, and the third aspect of it would be being impeccable to my word.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a real good. That's like a love letter to yourself when you're impeccable with your word. No, I truly love that. That's phenomenal. Now, here's another question that I want to sort of dive deep into.
Hmm.
Whenever you have a foundation like that, it pushes you through life and it gives you statements to sort of guide the path that you're going on. Now, something that most people avoid talking about is failure in those moments, failure to adhere to those values. So I want
Yeah.
you to think through like a specific failure that occurred, right? That like you didn't align with your value, and then like what you learned from that, and then sort of how are you now shoring up your fences to make sure
Mhm.
that you always like revert back to your values.
Yeah. So it's actually knocking on all three. So when I was in Mexico, right, I said I'm gonna learn Spanish, right? Um, and I had it set to be there for 6 or 8 months. And I've learned when I started with group classes, right? And while I was in this group classes setting from people all over the world, all ages in Mexico, and what I just shared with you, Ruth, being a dancer, being in the sports space, and then of course we haven't gotten there yet, but the Hollywood space and then TED space. I feel like the world's my stage, right? So what I failed is till this day I'm not fluent in Spanish yet. I'm 50%, and by hiding is I went from group classes because I was afraid to fail. Like think how we're talking right now. Let's go to Spanish, and I'm like and I was like, "Oh, I was like, uh-uh." And so I continued Spanish class but went from group classes to one-on-one. And like what's the value? I mean, of course there's still value in that, but I went into hiding within hiding, if that makes sense.
Mm, it
So
does.
the lesson behind that of many, and that's just one example, Ruth. I am no longer hiding. I just say what I need to say, and I don't hide. I just say it and peel those band-aids, and you keep it moving. And I actually can share an example today if you like.
Yeah.
Um, so I know one example was the Spanish, and I'm pulling out my phone because that is what happened. But it was, I simply shared with a very close friendship of mine, I said, "Stop being so hard on yourself," right? And then I got the message, huh? And I'm like, it was whether it was a trigger word, but also I'm just like, oh, they're not ready for it yet, right? And you've been in those situations. And
Yep.
I could have just kept doing what I'm doing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to say what I'm going to say. And I'm not going to read the whole text messages of it. But knowing that having just simply those contexts of it, and I know I'm still growing as a person, you know, hearing the response of like, hey, I'm just letting you know, stop being hard on yourself, that's all. And based on your response, I know not to mention it again, right? And then just hearing the response of like, hey, Sammy, I am where I am because I have expectations for myself. It's
Mm.
not being hard on yourself, it's setting standards and hitting those. And people that fail because they're too lax on their standards. And, you know, fast forward of all, at the end of the day, it was such a lesson and teaching moment. So after literally today, I'm like, man, I want to have these daily lesson and teaching moments because it was so like, in that moment, Ruth, of I was like, it was like this trigger of and I'm like, oh, they're not ready for it, right? But I'm like, I kept embracing that pain and discomfort, and that was today.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I love that like lessons come through life and like we have these opportunities to take time and either take stock from it or it's
Yeah.
something that's going to pass from us and we're not going to gain the understanding from it, you know? And so we always have a choice to
Mm-hmm.
take moments like that and either grow or just stay stagnant through life. And I love the fact that you took the time to grow, which is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Love this. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about your family, but I also want to dive deeper into your role as an aunt, right? I understand that you are an aunt to a beautiful human being, and I love being the fun aunt. I love being crazy with them and pushing with them and getting this opportunity to love a human being in a way that I never thought I could love a human being, right? Like it's that thing of like, are you my child or are you like, what's happening right now? I have fears that have come up now that I never thought I would have because you
Mm,
love this human being so much. And it's this very specific, beautiful role that you have to play as like a guide in their life and an encourage in their life. So I know that's something that you understand, right? And so I think the question I want to dive into is as you look, I believe it's your niece. You have a niece, right? Correct
yeah,
me
I
if
have
I'm
a
wrong.
niece. I have
Yep.
one niece, one and only niece, and four godchildren.
Perfect. Here's my question to you. These humans are 15 years removed now. Like they're older, they're living life, they're walking through and everything like that. What
Mm-hmm.
is the one lesson, or maybe let's do this. What are the three lessons that you want them to understand? Like they're listening to this podcast 15 years from now and they go, these are the three lessons my aunt taught me for sure. And this is
Mm-hmm.
how it's guided me through life. So, what would those three be? As you look at these humans and you look at how they're growing, what are three nuggets of wisdom that you'd want them to have to sort of set them up for life?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to the number one is going to be faith. Tap into that zone. Tap into it from every mind, soul, strength, heart, Bible, show up, whatever that means. Again, there's over what 40, 30,000 religions in the world, whatever's comfortable for them, but tap in and own your faith, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that would be my number one. My number two, it's so interesting you're asking me these questions. I mentioned the second one would be is owning. I'm not saying this $5 million house. Who knows how much a minimum house is going to be 15 years from now? But having ownership of that one transportation and that one roof. And I even threw in a little detail: minimum 3 bedrooms and a vehicle,
I love
right?
it.
And
Yep.
I'll get into more of the why in that second one in a second. And then my third would be something around heart, like,
Mm.
and I know that sounds so um generalized, or like a a, a continuous like vinyl, even if they'll
Yeah.
literally even know what a vinyl is in 15 years from now. But it's I think as I'm building this lighthouse of hands and hearts, it's really going back to the basics of, like, I would just say dictionary, right? I would give them a dictionary, update your words. But if I just had to say my top 5 words in this third aspect of it, it would be heart, peace, love, compassion, and I'm not sure what the fifth one is right now, but those would be the top
Okay.
four.
I
And
love
joy.
this.
Did I say joy? I don't know if I said joy.
No, joy is a great one. Joy is a great one for them to have. Okay, now dive a little bit into number two that you shared. Let me hear more about that in
Yeah,
regards to the
so
house and the car and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, I think it's yeah, I've been in 10 cities, 10 countries. And again, my older sister, when she after she graduated college, she didn't know where to go, and she stood and she took her like 5, 6 years to graduate college, and she didn't like she kind of felt like she hit a dead end. So her advice coming, sharing with me being 4 years younger with her is like, Sammy, do as many internships as you humanly can. Until this day, like that is such a molding information advice I ever got from my older sister. So, and I literally told what I'm about to say to you now, the advice of like something that was so strong and equally to that, I shared with my little sister who's 18 years younger than me, and I was like, "Listen, at least have all your stuff in one under one roof and have that vehicle. Not to say you need to spend a year in this same exact home and use this exact vehicle, but you have something to go back to because as I've traveled, I've done all these cool things, amazing connections, experiences, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, I'm under a roof where I don't own it yet, or it's not my
Mm.
own. So I just feel like ownership is a very timely word right now, or that anchor.
What 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 about ownership for you is like creating this specific feeling, right? So I understand that you don't own your house or you don't have your, but like, what is the next level of that for you?
I think it's, even to replace ownership, it's this anchor, having that base, having that like, hey, you grounded in your building.
Mm.
I just I'm at 30, I'm 31 now, and I've never been in a anchoring and grounding state of my, life that has ever happened. So it's like I rather her hear that advice of, hey, grounding might happen to you whether you're 12, 18, 21, whatever that's supposed to happen, but no, just put that on like your top list that you want to accomplish. Um, so when you are in your time of building, or I don't want to say lost, I'm not lost. It's just you're in your building. If you want to build at home, right? It's like I had another mentor in the Hollywood states of when we're shooting long nights. He's like, you know how I like my eggs at home, so have that anchor, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What I want to know then is for you as you're going through this phase, right, of trying to figure out how to build your anchor out, what are you learning about yourself? What's something that's coming up for you? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm learning why I do things. I've
Okay.
learned in simple ways. Say if I say something a lot, I'm like, oh, I didn't get over something, say 3 years ago or 3 months ago or however long. I think it's the key. If I just had to say it in one word, you're looking at your patterns and you're like aware of your patterns. You're like, oh wait, wait. I know this is a different person, but like, hey, it's like in a new body, right? Or like, oh, that's a pattern. Don't go back to it, right? I mean, I don't want to call it red flags. It's so trendy. I don't use those words, but it's like I'm starting to look at my professional and personal patterns. That's one aspect of it. And also, I'm like, man, I have such a gold mine. It's like I don't. It doesn't matter where I'm at. I can make it anywhere in the world.
You can make home anywhere in the world. Like that's
Yeah.
an amazing skill to be able to find a place to get yourself grounded, right? Whatever that looks like. Many people are not that. Listen, I need like 2 to 3 months, multiple decisions, dancing
Mhm.
around with it, then basically coming up with no. Where you're like, yeah, let's go, let's fly here, let's do this, let's be adventurous in this way. So that's a beautiful skill that you have from this area of dance that you're currently going through. So no, I love that.
Yeah,
Okay,
and I
good to
would just say
know.
the one last thing, Ruth, I would say is I know I'm 31, and when you hear the word tired, you're like, dude, you're 31. How are you tired? Tired? 30, 20s and 30s, you're supposed to be in the hustle and bustle, and I'm just like, I don't have it in me to just be dropped or like think of pinned and dropped into build. I'm like, no, I want to just build with what I got now. I'm not there
Mm,
to the more people or events or experiences on the shelves, right? I'm like, let me just I want to it's like what can I offer today, right? and just focusing what I can offer today versus to keep go it, adding on to the resume or experiences. I'm like, no, I want to build right now.
Is it more that you want to build something that's more passionate for you versus building for another individual, or what?
It's
How, break that down for me.
yeah, it's more building for myself, right? But also, as I'm building for myself, I'm still offering my current resources to of my current project and also other people's events or podcast or things like that. So I think it's just like I'm just grateful for what I have now. And Her name is Mitzi Purdue. She comes from the Sheridan um, world. Think of like Paris Hilton. There's the Hilton hotels.
Hmm.
And when I first heard it about like 5 months ago, I think she shared it with me. She's like, being in a space where you're like, my bandwidth is like, I'm meeting all these deadlines, I'm working on blank. I kind of don't want to meet anyone new, but hey, but also open at the same time. So, like, if I'm in that space of building, I'm like, I'm actually very grateful what I have, but you're like, Sammy, trust me. Like, you want to meet this person? I'm like, okay. But, like, does that make sense? It's just like
Yeah.
grateful for what I have and I'm building at the same time.
Since you, I mean, your career is insane. Like I was reading through all your stuff, and I was like, I didn't know she did half this stuff. This is pretty cool.
Mm,
You've gone through multiple stages of building, right? You've essentially, like, I'm looking at this, I'm like, girl, you took a lot of risks and they've come out beautifully. But there's also been this, like, a very specific direction that you're going. Now, I want to find out from you, what is something that you have learned in this season of building? What is something that is true about it, something that's like impacted you? And then maybe what's one misconception that people don't understand about being in this process of building?
hmm. I would say I want to. I'm looking at. So you know how we're in building, right? And like you said, I've taken all these risks. Um, I've never was able to put this into words, but I want to build to finish. I've never
Ooh,
been into that before. I want to build to finish. And yes, if you look at what I've done, and it's like you might be like, you did finish, but there's certain avenues where I'm like, hey, I don't have an Oscar yet. I don't have an Emmy yet. It's like, but yeah, I just want to build to finish. So if I say, for let's just say example, hey, I'm gonna bring Ted to Chicago. Whether that takes me 3 years, I'm being told it might take a 3-year project. Until I bring Ted to Chicago, that's a build to finish. Like you know. So that's one avenue. And then what was the question in the sense of like something that's like not true or something? A misconception?
I think a misconception, right? Because for me, everyone right now, all my friends are like, I'm listening to this TED Talk and I'm listening to
Mm,
this. And I'm like, but you don't understand what entrepreneurship is, because there's
yeah.
seasons that you're lonely. There's seasons where you're doing things that don't make sense. You're doing things that, like, your time is different than when you're working for someone else. So
Yeah.
as you build, there's a lot of things that people, it looks beautiful because everyone sees that person in like the big house with amazing car and like on a yacht living life. And I'm like, they just got that last year. They've been building for 60 years. Like, let's put things into perspective. So
Mhm.
that would be my question to you, is like, what's one thing for you, right, that most people have had a misconception or misunderstanding about your season of building?
Yeah, I have two responses. One is like, I feel like you just see the before and afters. And like for me, I'm just like, ugh, like, where's that middle part, right? And I feel like there's one person that's really exposing or like kind of pulling the curtain behind that. And I condemn her for it because, as she's becoming this amazing emerging, voice. And she's like, man, today was a rough week on like 5 different spectrums of my life. And I was like, oof, oh my God, yes, right? Um, so that's one aspect of like stop looking at before and afters. Like look at I mean, you keep hearing the journey of it, but like really lean into that part and literally go there or say that. Like people, I feel like hold back because they're afraid to like whether it's if you want to tweet it, journal it, whatever. But when you're in that middle part of the journey, go there and whatever that means, right?
Mm, yeah.
Um, and the misconception, I'm trying to think of like things that haven't been said. Like as I'm coming up with this right now, it's like I don't want to say something I heard. I would just say here, maybe there's this part. I know we're only a few days into May, right? I chose not to be on social media for the month of May, right? And when
Hmm.
people, I feel like there's this misconception like, oh my God, what's happening? She's having a mental breakdown. Ironically, I didn't even know this, by the way. I mean, it's like there's so many holidays for the month. It's like May is like mental health month. Like, oh, is she doing that? I was like, oh my God, no. It was just like, it was very, this was a very internal heart compass decision. And I
Yeah.
was just like, I'm not a scroller too much, but I was just like, hey, as I'm in this building, I just want to like shut down all the social medias for a month and like see what I accomplish, right? And
Mm.
also by doing that, I also wrote it on all ends, because going back to what we're talking about, the hiding, I don't want to be like, and it's not to say I feel like I always need to explain myself, with publicity and PR, like you always feel like you need to respond to comments. No, no, I'm not about that. I just feel like communication is so important, to the point of like, if like, where's Sammy? Oh, she's off for a month, right? It's just communicating that. And my a lot of my followers or people that have been following my journey, I don't want them to think like, oh, I just went poof, because there's two times I went poof, in the sense of writing my book, and then I learned that lesson of the delay of the publishing. And also I recently heard from my mentor, it's okay to cry, but like, instead of crying, communicate. I know that sounds so weird.
Mm.
I was like, whoa. And, she's telling this to her little daughter. I'm like, dude, that hit me. I'm like, that worked on me.
I think it's the way I've heard that and received it, and then also like worked through it, is communicating your insecurities, right? So even if that you're in pain, or even if like you're mad or you're angry or whatever feeling is sort of occurring around you, you still have to be able to communicate to those around you so that they can understand, or even just get a glimpse of what's
Mm,
happening with you, right? And you give people permission. They don't have to speak into it and fix it, but you give
yeah.
them permission when you do that to just sit with you. So that's something that I've always taken in, is like, all right, even if I'm pissed, I still have to communicate what is actually happening or what the next steps are. But I love that statement. I might put that on a t-shirt. We'll see. 2024, we'll see how that rolls. I love that. So, okay, here's a question that I want to ask any guest that comes here, because
Mhm.
I want to know, what is like a moment that you've had recently that like made you laugh to the point where you were in tears, right? It was joy, it was happiness. It can be by yourself, it can be with your niece, it can be with whoever. But I want you to set up the stage and share the story with me of what something that recently brought you joy. There we go. Yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I'm having two moments. It's like the decision part, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Give
think
us
I'm gonna.
both. Let's ride.
Well, it would, just to work backwards of it. It just happened before this podcast. Like this, it was, I don't sing in front of people. I'm tapping into like just this, I'm taking a stand up one class, just, when you get asked to now, to MC or co-host or host, whether it's podcasts, radio shows, events, I'm like, I just kind of want to leverage this skill, so I'm going to do some stand up classes. So I bought a microphone and a speaker, and I'm just getting that, just hearing yourself. But then I heard a worship song, and I do not sing in front of anybody, anybody. And I am
Uh-huh.
singing right now. And then my little sister's on the wall, like crawling like this, like, and I'm just like, oh, oh. And, with little siblings, they will make, it's like when you hear that thing, people don't forget. Oh, like that's the definition. How, I don't care. People lean on me for a Rolodex. Listen, to this day, I go, if I want honesty, I go to my little 12-year-old sister. She is the most honest with me, and she will remind me. So that was a joyful moment. And the second point is still in under umbrella, as I'm like embracing this stand up class, right? Um, my first assignment was to do a storytelling. And the fact that my mom's on the toilet and I'm doing my stories. It's it's so funny. And now looking at it, my joyful moments are clearly with my family, right? And keep in mind, I haven't lived in Chicago in over 10 years. So talk about going back. I am going back and
This
building.
is awesome.
But my mom's on the toilet and I'm like, um, and I'm a talker, clearly. And the fact that I'm like tapping into this, like doing my first storytelling, like practice, my practice one on her. And I'm like, she's like, what's going on? Like, she was like, what is this? She's like, Sammy, so you're like, you're stuttering. Like, this is not you. What are you doing? So just imagine my mom's on the toilet and I'm practicing my storytelling improv class. And my mom's like bashing me in the sense, like, why are you stuttering? What's going on? Why are you afraid? I'm literally, I'm like, there's just so much going on. A person's on a toilet. I'm tapping into this new world. And yeah, that's, you can't make this up, Ruth. You can't make this up.
That is living life right there. That is living life with family. That's living life in the moment. That is getting true and
Um,
honest feedback, right? Because listen, your family will tell it all of it. That is
yes.
hilarious. That is hilarious. I love that. Love that story. Okay. So we just talked about joy. Now I like to go the opposite, right?
Oh.
Because feelings terrify us. Feelings are things that I like to avoid unless it's happy and joyful and sort of loud. So, what is a time, right, that most recently where you were just brought down to either pain or emotion that just, it can be any kind of pain. It can be sorrow. It can be like, what's a moment where you even just, I'll give you an example of just like, someone's story that is close to you and they're struggling and that like, like, so find something like that and like share that with us.
Mm. Do you prefer something more personally or someone else? Because I kind of,
Personal, this is
yeah,
you, girl. We were in
yeah.
your story.
Um, man, this is when my brain, when I have to pick, I'm like, I have top three. So, um, I think it's important to tap into what I'm about to say because like you're gonna hear the story of it, but I also feel like with the brain, like, and I feel like it's a really thing that's out there, but people don't talk about it. And it could be like, for example, like my mom driving my sister to go drop her off to dance, and like I don't know what trigger it is, but it's like, say you didn't say, like, say you're on a Zoom call and you're like, you can't say bye to them, and then like during like 5 minutes your brain like tells this story, like they got into an accident and they die, and then you
Ooh,
like cry as if they passed away, and I'm just like, are you with me? I don't know if this is like you literally cry as if you just got the news someone passed away.
whoa. Okay, you got to break this down. You got to break all this down, girl. This is so
No.
that has happened to you. No, no. Listen, that's not how I roll, but that's okay. That's totally okay.
You're like,
So
oh God, Sam, you are
no,
late.
this is great. No, we're gonna eat. We're gonna dive into this thing and figure it out. So is that more of just like a fear of loss of the people you love, or is that more of like an occurrence that you have where it's like you want to be more intentional with your goodbyes and I loves you? Like break this down for me
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's
Let's
sort of
break
what
it
I got from
down.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's break it down. And I think this also kind of pertains to even the previous question, as I'm like being still and building, like learning inner stuff about yourself. So, um, being this futurist kid who I am, and futurist, I kind of define futurist as just like, yes, we're in 2024. My brain, because of my life experiences and people that I know, I feel like my brain is like 2028. I know
Mm,
that's a pretty bold statement, but I'm just gonna say how it is. I
make
have
it.
the premises and evidence of it. Um, so when my I remember this as if this was yesterday. So I remember, with the big family that I have, we're always big on hugs and kisses before and leaving, right? And again, I was very young, and I remember I didn't say goodbye to my grandfather, and I remember that moment, right? And then fast forward the story, a couple days later, I found out he passed away, right?
Mm,
So it's just like, this is why, like, some people can be like, Sammy, you very emphasize, you say hello and like see you later, or even like say I stay over at your house, say I'm a guest at your space, your home for 3 days. Every morning I'll say good morning and like kiss you on the cheek, and people don't understand that, right? And when you realize people's behavior, it comes from something. And I realized that's where it kind of rooted from. I was aware that I did not say goodbye to my grandfather, and a couple days later he passed away. And this is my
Yeah.
father's father, right? So fast forward it to like recently. So I feel like when I'm on a Zoom call, or say, hey, I'm human, like I'm in a funk mood, and say I said some words I didn't mean, or just like I was just like bye or blah blah blah, I get this replay of like mentally like, oh, something just happened. And then, not to say, but I'm not afraid of death. You know, it's part of life. Like the opposite of
Yeah.
birth is death. So I think just really chopping it up is, my brain like drifts in like 2024 20 between 2024 and 2028 or beyond or before. And I think it's just very important of just really controlling that. So when people say, hey Sammy, what do you need help with, I say just keep bringing me back to reality, because my mind and ideas just drift and I go in a whole other layer of a, dimension. Because they say there's 12 dimensions here on earth, and there's about, I forgot what article I saw this on, but as of today, they say the most subconscious and unsubconscious layers people have got as high as 5 and 6. So when you're in the dimension of 5 and 6, you are a futurist person. And I know
Hmm.
I may be speaking a different language. You're probably like, Sammy, what are we talking about here? But I think to really be breaking this down, Ruth, is my mind drifts off because of, say, remembering that I didn't say, I had left a family party without giving a kiss on my grandfather's cheek, to then, like, when I ever have to say bye, whether it's leaving the airport or simply, hey, I'm going to drop off my little sister to school or dance, my brain kind of goes in a dark space, but then it'll come back.
You know what it is? For me, I look at that or interpret that as death has taught you the presence of time, or the importance of being very intentional with your time.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lesson that I've also learned is through the death of my mom and my dad. And being very intentional with, what do I have today? Did I tell my
Mhm.
family that I loved them? Was I intentional with my conversations? Was I intentional with my faith? Like, these are things that I have to check in with continually, because we have this understanding of death and life. And
Mhm.
it's a good thing sometimes, but it also can be a crazy thing in other ways, because, I'm like, hey, you didn't call me today. Like, my brother's like, so what? Like, I'll talk to you later. And so I'm like, no, you have to talk to me now. Like, we have to engage right now, because I need that connection point to be like, hey, do you know I love you? Do you know that I care for you? Do you know that I pray blessings over you?
Yeah.
Um, but that's a beautiful lesson, right?
Mhm.
It's definitely a gift that carries also a lot of emotion, because it can carry guilt, it can carry
Yeah.
fear, and so that's an interesting thing to know, that you and I connect on that, but you take it to a whole other level, my love.
And that happened like 7, 8, you know?
Wow. Yeah,
So,
but now it's a core memory. And it's
mhm.
also something that has been a gift to you, because I guarantee you that everybody around you knows how you feel about them. They know that you care for them. They know that you're intentional with them. So I go, it's something that shook you, but I think it shook you in the right way. I think it's a
Mhm.
gift now that you have to impart on those around you, but also just part of your character. So I'm like, I like it. I dig it. I'll roll with you. I'll roll. I didn't know the dimension stuff. I'll let you know right now. So I don't know what she's talking about, but I'll roll with
I just
it.
learned that. I want to be like this catalyst guru, but this is why I just kind of feed the brain, you know?
Yeah. So, question for you around faith, right? So you've
Mhm.
mentioned that your faith is very important, and it's something that you want your niece and your godchildren to know and to have. Can you just walk me through your faith journey and like what that has been for you?
Yeah. So, I, again, Mexican, Italian, Polish. I got baptized as a baby. I had two godmothers. And then I was in Catholic school my whole life, from elementary school to high school. However, and I was very, as an elementary school, like I would write birthday cards, draw crosses on them. And I also had in elementary school nuns that lived like a few houses down, and my mom said I would visit them and just pray with them, or I just love being around them. So there was a point, believe it or not, I thought I was going to be a nun. And then, yeah,
Go ahead, girls. What?
I
What?
swear. And
Sister
then,
Sammy's in the house.
girl, I would need my own syllabi and instructions.
Oh, I
Because,
love
yeah, I'm sure if I want to enter now, whoa, Lord, I don't think I could. But, or it's like TMZ would just come rolling. But,
it. Oh,
and, but,
that's awesome.
but to keep this moving, so my parents divorced when I was eighth grade, right? And then that's when I felt like, I prayed a lot and, had conversations with God. And I'm like, God, hey, if you're real, like, you're going to keep my parents together. Parents officially
Mm,
divorced.
mhm.
And, I don't use this word to like, I don't know if I was atheist or not, but all I can say I was just like, I wasn't saying like F God or nothing like that. I was just like, kind of like, when you have that, I mean, listen, you're 12 years old. You're also going to be the summer becoming a freshman. You have ego. You're just like, who am I? I just feel like that's such a outside of, parents are divorcing the summer, becoming a freshman in high school. That's just like an interesting age. My faith has changed like total 360. So I was doing that for a bit of just like, I wouldn't go to church, or it's not even the church part. I just was like, hey, if I accomplish anything, it's on me. I'm going to thank myself. Fast forward now to college, and my sister was starting to have nightmares. And I didn't know what this was. And I don't know if you know this, I was part of a sorority. And
Learning so much. I'm going to put that in the notes.
Eta
Okay.
Chi
I got
Omega. It was a multicultural sorority.
love this.
And one of the sisters, she's, very faith based, and, she was telling my sister was telling her about these nightmares that she was having. And then her name's Chevy Booze. She talked to me, and, she's like, hey, your sister's having nightmares. And I was like, and I just kind of took it with a grain of salt. And I just never really, I felt like I was kind of like, just, okay, like, what do I need to do? And I don't know if I started going to church or not, but it wasn't impactful enough where I'm like, no action steps were happening. Now about, let's say, 5 years ago, so let's say 2020, it's my big sister still in this of how, like, what happened. So my sister always invited me to this Christian church. My brother-in-law's from Indiana, and I feel like when you get invitations from family, you're like, yeah, 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 right? And when my sister hit probably one of her top three lowest points in her life, and that's when I went to church with her. And outside of, it was just totally the act of love. And outside of showing up for her, I was like, whoa, what is this space? During worship, my eyes were tearing. There was something in my throat. I'm on my knees, I'm stepping up, I'm like, whoa. So to land the plane here, Ruth, I promised myself that I'm not going to wait until it takes that, family or not, to show up for someone, which is so ingrained in me of like, people like, Sammy, what, how, and why do you show up as hard as you do? And that's where it's like, I'm able to share my faith. It's not like a selling point. It's like, this is what happened. So I got baptized at Road to Life 2 years ago, and it's been this amazing blessing. And then about 2 months ago, so now we're in 2024, I had a mentor tell me, Sammy, I love you. I care for you. You're all over the place. You're like a monkey in a cage. And my home, and I wouldn't say my homework in that moment, he's like, get a piece of paper, write your name in the middle, and write down everything you love. Like, be selfish. Like, don't don't write things that, like, other people, like your friends have companies that you're doing those things. Like, what do you love? And I did that, Ruth. And I also did this exercise with my little sister. And I sent him the paper that day because he called me literally an hour later. And knowing that this guy has over 40,000 contacts in his phone, I'm not even kidding. He connected me with a church about 20 minutes away from where I'm living currently here in Chicago. His name's Pastor Danny Lodge. It's Solutions Church. And I went to church, and that's just like my new home, my new altar. And I got rebaptized again, and
Let's
it's a
go.
different lens. Like it's I'm
Yeah.
on week whatever 6, 7, 8. I'm not sure. I'm not keeping count, but that's that's the faith. And I think why I got baptized, and I think it's important to say, is like I'm tired of doing it my way. 10 cities, 10 countries, God's the only way, and my solution, and it's like he's the true destination. So have faith, and you know love God with all your soul, heart, mind, and have strength again within it, and treat others like your neighbors. It's pretty basic. Those are my two, like,
Pretty
that's
simple.
me.
Yeah.
So
So here's the next question. What is what was the big transformation from like walking through life, right? And then recommitting to yourself? Because when I am in my walk with the Lord, it is beautiful. When
mhm.
I am not, it is a nightmare. And there,
Yeah.
you can, not in the sense of like I'm out burning churches and all this great, like that is not happening. I think it's just more of being able to receive people, being able to care for people, not being so self focused. Um, I guess my question for you would be is like, what is something that you've seen that has been an improvement in your life now that you've made this commitment?
Good question. I'm going to say one is my most important conversations are the ones I'm having today. I'm not just saying this because it's a podcast. Like, if my most important conversations are not the conversations I had yesterday, not the ones I'm going to have tomorrow, like today. And when you are truly so present and woke, or whatever you want to call it, you're really moving the needle forward. But as you're being so present in really thanking people for time and their energy for today, and all the conversations that that have happened, or just dialogued and being able to be put to words, um, just know that those are the true friendships and hearts that need to be conversated with, and they're actually the ones that are there to help you. And
Mm-hmm.
if you do have an ask, make sure you have it in that it's good to hear about stories, but if you're like, hey, like, what do you need help right now, like what's a timely prayer right now, or say those things. So I would just say being so present in the people you're supposed to talk to, the ones that are happening. And the second part of it is, I like to give credit where it's due. The CEO of Deepak Chopra, his name is Punacha. And like right now, Ruth, we cannot recreate this.
Yeah.
We can't. And once you really are aware of, you cannot recreate this, and the conversations are the most important conversations, are the ones that you're doing today. Um, yeah, that's it.
It
So I would
changes
just
how you walk through
clarity,
life. Yeah. That's so good.
clarity.
I'm
Oof.
excited for you. This is great. This is a good place to be. It's a beautiful place to be, and I'm excited for you. This is okay. This is great to know. Now, based upon that, listen, based upon where you are and having this peace, what are
Mhm.
your future aspirations? Like, what is next on the horizon? What are your goals? Let's even bring it down. What are your goals for the next 6 months? What are you being intentional with?
In 6 months, so let's just say the month. So we're in May, right? June, July, August, September, October, November. Okay, that's actually a good time. In November, I'm going to be out of debt, credit card debt, um, and also have enough finances to buy this condo by the beach, so I can catch my sunrises and sunsets. And yeah, that's it. That's like the big one for me. And the other parts of it is, I have what, when you get asked like, hey, what's your 5 year, 10 year, um I actually have two very important people in my life. Like, I really feel like that's my 5 year, that's my 10 year. But knowing who I am, I'm probably going to do it with before 5 years and before 10 years.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's like kind of the second answer to it. Because it's like they have, you can say the lifestyle. They don't check every box for me, but they check enough where I'm like, oh, if I really focus, Sammy, like focus, I can accomplish that in 5 years and I can accomplish that in 10. And, I'm half one person's age and one not too much older than me. So it actually
Yeah.
really, it's like so
It's
clear.
feasible.
Yeah. And I know with the Think and Grow Rich, like, hey, write down your goals and have the dates and times. I think, when you say that the first part of it, it's like, hey, I already said I'm gonna, what's it, no, July 1st, November 1st, I'm like, I am out of debt this time, and then I have enough money um, remaining to put a deposit. Like, that's how important having a roof and transportation is to me.
I love
Something.
it.
It may not be my
No,
dream home, but I'm like, it's something. I want that one roof of ownership.
it gives you direction. I love that because what I tell people, especially if I'm coaching them, is we need to set a direction. We need to set a course because right now floundering around is not helping you at all. Right? Even if it's the wrong course in the next 2 months, we were able to pivot and then
Yeah.
figure out where we need to go. So I love the fact that you said, here's two things I'm going to be intentional with because then everything else in your life aligns with those things.
Hmm.
Right? But if you don't have that, you'll get picked up left and right. Everything else that will come through will distract you from actually getting after your goals. So, no, that's pretty
Hmm.
cool. Now, here's a fun question I like to ask, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit morbid, so I can ask you. We're good. We're living
You
life.
can go there. You can ask me anything. I'm not.
We're going to the dark side.
Oh,
Um, Imagine this: we are at your funeral. It is a beautiful funeral, and we are loving it. We know where you are. You're in heaven. You're enjoying life, and it's a beautiful thing.
mm.
Um, there's, let's say, 2 to 3 people who stand up and talk about your life. What are they going to say about you?
Hmm.
I'll give you mine. I'll start with mine, and then you can dance with that.
Yeah, that's a
Number
thinking
one,
one.
yeah, it's a thinking one because
That's a thinking
here
one.
and
I
here's the
like
reason I asked this
those.
question. Yeah, here's the reason I asked this question because if your goals don't align with the picture you see, then this is an opportunity to pivot, right? So for me, the biggest one is like, man, she lived her faith out. Like she was a woman of God. She cared for everybody that she met. She brought joy in every single conversation that she was able to do. Like, this is who she is. The second one is sort of tied to joy, is a statement that I got from one of my mentors. He said, man, Ruthie, you are a party and a half looking for a place to happen. And that is a statement that I have in my mind so that, like, when I interact with people, I love parties. I want people to be happy. I want people to be loved. I want joy and excitement, but also this caring piece because that's what our parties are with my family. It's there's this joy and excitement, but also this love and community. So anytime someone interacts with me, I want them to leave with that experience. Um,
Mhm.
and the third thing was that she was fully her. Like she was not unapologetic of how she showed up. She was unapologetic of what she said, sometimes got her in trouble, sometimes, got her promoted, but it was very much she lived her truth. This is who she was. And she grew in that. Like that's also a big piece of like, I'm the person I am today, but hopefully 10 years, I'm a better version of myself. And that
Mhm.
those around me who get to interact with me see that and understand that. So those are my top three. And sort of that's how I walk through life. And that's why I'm very intentional with my conversations. I love amazing people around me because I'm like, let's have a party, let's talk, let's dance, let's do this thing. And then also this thing of like pursuing Christ. Like I'm like, listen, I am a hot mess express, so this has to be a daily dance. Yeah. So what would be your three?
Well, one would be I never met anyone like Sammy. Like never
Ooh,
met anyone like her. And she always wished me a happy birthday, no matter where
love
she
it.
was at in the world. Yeah. Um, that'd be one. This might be a joking one. The number one thing I always got, and now that I'm not traveling as much, how many times I get, where in the world is Sammy? Like, imagine being that person. Like, I don't know who would say this. I'll probably give this joke to my sister. Guys, I know you're trying to track Sammy, but at least we know where she is. It would be a hit or miss, but I'm like, go for it. This is her physical body, but we know where she is in spirit, which would then lead to, hey, um, she's had this fearless journey with faith, and she started to becoming more public with it, her midlife, whether it's 30. Yeah, so say something along those lines.
I love that.
Um, and I think honestly, just something around the world, something around the words of like, she brought light to my heart, she brought light in the room, or she physically brought her disco ball, because that's, I always travel a disco ball with me, it's always in my chat light, you know. So something along the terms of light, because I get text messages or in general like, Sam, you light every layer of my heart, you are like this human lighthouse that are just trying to connect human hands and heart together. And you bring literally a disco ball, so you bring the light physically too.
I love that.
So there'll be a
Okay,
disco ball
that
at
is
my
pretty
funeral
cool.
too.
Oh, 100%.
The
100.
lighting, like literally, I would make sure I tell my sister and my parents, like, you better hire a gaffer to light up my funeral. Like,
I can't with you.
no,
I
really, I am
can't.
the light queen.
Oh my God.
Like that, I
Awesome.
love light. Like I'm so OCD with light. Like I'm just like, I need light. Like when it's like that white blank like light bulb, I'm like, that's prison light. Like I'm like, we need to warm it up. Like we need that Japanese Edison light bulb flavor, you know.
I love all of this. People gonna
And
be
when I'm
walking and be like,
in my
"Are we in a club?"
Airbnb, listen, my Airbnb that I lived in a place for 3 months, I brought my own light bulbs. And and I like candles and incense.
Okay. I just got a glimpse of like literally people walking in and being like, "Are we at a club? Like what's going on? Disco ball spinning, incense coming
We'll
up.
throw a red light therapy. It's really good for inflammation and
Oh
healing,
my
girl.
goodness. My goodness. This is amazing. I love all of this. All right, so I want to make sure I'm respecting your time, and I can't believe it's already been like an hour, but I'm loving all of
That's
this.
all right.
Um, Here's what I want to do. I want to just share a little bit about your book, like give you some time to just share about it and like what it is and sort of how it came to be, so that way people can
Mhm,
have a chance to go check it out
mhm.
and just share like how people can connect with you and learn about what you're doing. So I want to give you that time, and then we'll finish this thing off. Go ahead. Tell us a little bit about your book, Fearless.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna bring it out. 1 second.
Yeah, bring it out. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to see Fearless. I'm excited for this. I'm excited. Let's go.
You know how people are like, oh, they're prepared. So this is how it looks.
I love it.
Fearless. Um, so yeah, it's called Fearless. It's about creating and loving what you do. And it came out in 2019. And we're in 2024, but I'll tell you this, I reread my book. It's an 80-page read, guys. It's a quick read. And I say that too. I'm a slow reader, so I do say quick read in that sense. But it's while after recently rereading it, I love that it still pertains to today's world. Like I'm just like, you hear
Mm.
words of like inner circle, joy. I'm like, man, I made that inner circle word before everyone starts saying it, right? But the intention behind the book was two things. So again, I'm born and raised Chicago. I moved to LA exactly 1 year, June 1st to June 1st. I said, peace out, Girl Scouts. Then went to New York and I hit my year mark there. And I'm like, wait, I like this place. I'm staying here. So because I was working like in like 18, 21 hours a day on Hollywood sets, I was like, okay, what's another way to make money while sleeping? So the idea kind of sparked of like write a book. And then outside of having that layer, I also would get asked a lot like, Sammy, how'd you get to where you got? So you kind of put like answer that one question in that one book, and this is how to wait a way to make money while sleeping. And it was like the first time of me telling my story. So I broke Fearless up into acronyms, which represents each chapter of the book. And since I was on Hollywood sets, I actually interviewed people from like actors, producers, craft, like just a bunch of different people on Hollywood sets in different industries. Because since I minored in philosophy, I love perspective. So even though like, for one of the acronyms was energy, you got to hear like 8+ different perspectives on energy, right? So, yeah, and I would just say it's one of the books where I didn't realize how much a book, gives you credibility, but, outside of making more money or monetizing. And going back to the word being this futurist kid, I didn't, even though my book came out 2019, I didn't realize the value of my book until last year, 2023, when Jamie Lee Curtis, after working on the TV show The Bear, gave me a book. It was my most memorable book. It was my most memorable gift I ever received last year, and it was because it was a surprise outside of who it was from. I'm like, wait, this is like the most impactful book I ever read. You need to start giving your books again. So it's like tapping into like that inner work. So I know that was a big mouthful, but it's Fearless. If you want to get Fearless, tap into it. If it's available on Amazon, and once you're done reading it, you can email me. We can put the information on your episode, Ruth. And once you're done reading it, I'm happy to go ahead and donate my time and energy to have a Q&A with you. And let's know what your next step is, like being the director of your life and owning that space.
Love that. Be
Mhm.
the director of your own life. Girl, is that on a t-shirt? Lock that up. Be the director of your life. I love it. This is a perfect way to end it.
There you
Sammy, thank you so much, bud, for taking the time coming to hang with me.
go.
Man, I learned so much about you, like, stalking you on the internet and then just in this conversation. So grateful for your time and grateful for this opportunity to just learn about your story. So thank you so much, bud.
Thank you, Ruth. And guys, subscribe for Ruth.
Love this. Come join this craziness.